Welcome back to JK News, Out the Closet. Today we have Nick, and we're talking about transitioning. And most importantly, transitioning away from fighting due to injuries that you suffered and kind of pivoting into coaching. What happened? How do you get there?
So I started fighting more, and I was like, all right, let's just keep doing this. I started an MMA fight. I had my first MMA fight, prepped for that. Once again, didn't think I was ready. Coach was like, you want to do this? I was really bad at grappling. I was getting choked out all the time. In my head, I'm like, I'm a fucking kickboxer, dude. Like, going to the ground is gay. It's for pussies. I would never do that. I'm not that kind of guy.
I'm a stand-up specialist.
I'm a stand-up specialist, right? So I have my first MMA fight. I fight a kickboxer, and this guy's he's throwing hands at me, and I'm like, oh shit. It's different in MMA gloves because it's like, oh, this is because most of my fights before were all boxing gloves, so it's about like 14 ounces, 16 ounces, and then when you fight amateur MMA, they give you like 8-ounce MMA gloves. But they're really dense. But they're like when you get hit with them, it feels harder than a fist, like a bare knuckle.
Damn.
So this dude's throwing punches at me, and I'm like, oh my god, this guy's trying to kill me, right?
It's every single time.
No, literally, like that was what I thought. And in my head, I'm such a cocky piece of shit. I was like, oh, I'm gonna show you what real kickboxing is. I remember saying that in my head, like, oh, I'm gonna kickbox shit out of you. Guy starts throwing hands at me. I take him down immediately. I try to take him down. I get punched in the head. I miss the takedown completely. I almost get submitted.
Holy shit.
I end up winning that fight.
What the hell? How does that work? By points?
So he jumped for a headlock, a guillotine, right? And he locked his legs up, but he was against the cage. So when you get a guillotine, you need a little bit of crunch and a little bit of extension. So when he put me in the guillotine, I just pushed him against the cage, so he was just crunched.
So he can't pull back?
And I started punching him, punched his gut, he opened up, and then I just started ground and pounding. But like at the time in amateur, it's like, they stop it really quick. Because they don't want you, especially early in that.
They don't let it play out.
They don't let it play out that quick.
If someone looks like they're getting overwhelmed, they just
Yeah, and if they're in a bad spot, and he was kind of in a bad spot. Like his head is against the cage. He took some hard shot, but it was still really early.
So you're just sitting on top of him, just pounding.
To this day, I watch the video. I'm like, dude, this is nothing. This is nothing. Yeah, this is.
Herb Dean would have stopped it 3 minutes prior.
Yeah, nah, Herb Dean would have let me kill him. So I started getting more success, and I was like, okay, I'm fighting now, right? I fight another guy, and I just get held down for like 3 rounds. So I lost my decision. My wrestling sucked. Couldn't do anything. So then I was like, man, I can't,
So that's your first loss?
That was my first loss in MMA. So I was 1-1 in my MMA. That's when I finished my amateur career at 1-1 in MMA.
500?
500, baby.
Cool.
And
I don't know what that means.
after that, I was like, okay, I need to spend time grappling. So I just took some time away, and I was like, I'm just gonna grapple. And then during this time where I was just trying to rebuild and I was like, the goal is to get back in the cage, I was sparring all the time, and I caught a couple of really bad head injuries, like just concussions, where at the time I didn't really know what it was, right? Like I just kept, I started throwing up after practice one day, and I was just like really nauseous. I was really sensitive to light, and then like my head hurt for like hours, until the next day, and I just felt like brain fog. And it just kept happening over and over again because I was a fucking idiot. And then one time I saw my coach was like, hey, you should probably get a CT scan, make sure your brain's not bleeding. And I was like, huh? He's like, yeah, you could you get too much brain trauma, you might fall asleep in the middle of the night and
die, not wake up.
Yeah.
So I'm freaking the fuck out. I'm like, oh my god. And like, so I go to the doctor, I get a CT scan, and just going through this whole process is like, fuck, like this is real, right? Like when it's in the gym, it's fun, but then when I gotta get my mom to get my insurance card and take me to the CT, and she's like, why are we doing these scans? Like, what is all this?
Karate's crazy, mom.
Yeah, and at this time, she already knew I was fighting, right?
Oh, shit.
And when I was getting ready for my first MMA fight, I was cutting weight. I had to cut like 16 pounds in like 2 weeks.
16?
Yeah. And this is kind of all adds to the reason why I eventually decided to move away from fighting. But I remember the night before my fight, because I had to weigh in the next morning, I had to cut weight, so I'm in a bathtub. They pour a bunch of alcohol and Epsom salt. So it pulls all the water out of your body, so then you weigh in, because you're just taking water weight out. So I'm soaking in that tub, once you get out, you got to lay down, put a bunch of towels on you, and lay there, let your body sweat everything out, so you get a bunch more pounds out, right? My dad wakes up at like 2 a.m. in the bathroom, and he's like half awake, his pants are off, shirt on, and he's like, "What the fuck are you doing?" He just sees me on the floor, my head on the by the toilet, and just all these towels
On the floor of the bathroom?
Yeah, because that's how they do it. They put you in a little towel cocoon, and you just let yourself chill there. So you do like 20 on, 20.
And all your teammates are doing it for you?
So I was just by myself.
You're doing it to
I
yourself?
was doing it myself, which is not safe. You're not supposed to do this by yourself because you can pass out. It's not good. Blah blah blah. Especially when you're getting that close and you're not. And I wasn't doing it properly. By any means, I wasn't doing it the
It
right
doesn't
way.
sound like it.
I was suffering like it was awful. So my dad comes in, he's like, "What the fuck are you doing?" And I was like, "I'm gonna fight tomorrow," thinking I'm fucking type shit, And he's like, "What the fuck? You're fighting?" He's like, "An MMA? What?" And he was just flipping out at me. And I've never really seen, he doesn't really get mad at me. My dad, like, one other time he got mad at me was because I was ditching school or whatever, but that was it. Like, he was like so horrified. I was like, Jesus Christ. And this time was the other one where he's like, "What the fuck are you doing?" Like, yelling at me, like, creating a whole story, waking everybody up in the house, and everyone's like, "Oh, it's fine, just let him do it, whatever." Those are my sisters. Yeah, those are my sisters. "It's fine, whatever,"
They're all in their pajamas.
Yeah.
Why were you
Everyone's
cutting
half
weight
asleep.
at 2 a.m.?
This fight's tomorrow.
Yeah.
Could sleep.
Why'd you do it? Why'd you do it earlier?
I needed more time. I needed more. And when you're making weight, it's like it's very anxiety ridden because you're like, I don't know if I'm gonna do. And you don't know what I didn't. This is my first time doing it. I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. So anyway,
Just trying to sweat out.
yeah. So it's just like having that. My dad just like yelling at me about that shit. Like, "You're a fucking idiot for doing this." I kind of like was living in my head rent free. And at the time, I was like, yeah, my dad came. I didn't care. I'm still gonna go out there and fight. Like, I'm fucking that dude. And then years later, I'm like, oh, I think that did have an effect on me.
Yeah.
Like, oh,
I think I cared. Yeah.
And my decision making. So, fast forward to me, going to these doctor's appointments, keep getting these head injuries. And it wasn't like I got knocked out. It was just like I would spar with these big dudes. And, my neck was like, my neck's not that big, but at the time it was even smaller. So my head was just bouncing around. My brain just not being ready. And I just wasn't strong. I wasn't physically prepared for any of this. And the training wasn't as supervised as it should have been. And, I fucking paid the price for it. And there was one concussion I got, the last one, where I was like, I can't do this shit anymore. And what it was this is like the third one. And everyone already knows that this has been happening in my family. And I'm at home, I'm sitting in bed, and I'm just like thinking in my head, like, dude, this is fucking it. This is probably it. I won't be able to, I can't even get through my amateur career without having head injuries. Like, there's no fucking way. Right? This is what I was telling myself. And then seeing all my family members being so worried about me, looking at me, like, seeing like the worry in Tiff's eyes, like that really fucked me up. Because I was like, yo, this is like an act of self-preservation. I have to make some changes. Because I was feeling the concussions got progressively worse, right? At least the symptoms afterwards.
Is it because Tiff was scared of losing you? Like, that's how big the injuries were?
Well, it was just like, maybe not losing me, but just seeing the state that I was in for that moment.
Why are you doing this to yourself?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, I'm subjecting myself to this because I can't get out of my own way of my ego or my own pride or maybe a dream or whatever. But it was like, at the time, that's all I wanted to do. And it was a really hard decision for me to make where, like, like I'm sitting there, like, watching my family look at me, and I'm just crying, like, fuck, dude, like, what am I gonna do? Like, this is it. This is probably gonna be it. And then having that conversation with my coach where I was like, hey, man, like, I don't know if I'm gonna fight for a little bit. I think I'm gonna take some time off and, not stay away from head trauma for a little bit. And he was like, okay. Like, he was kind of, like, taken aback a little bit.
He kind of knew that you were done.
Yeah, maybe. And at that time, I was like, fuck, I don't know what else I'm gonna do. I spent all my time developing these skills that in my head I'm not even that good at. Like, I'm kind of just mediocre, right? Clearly, the evidence is showing. I can't even fucking defend myself. But and then so
Check him out for coaching.
exactly. And my coach was like, hey, you start coaching, start teaching the kids classes, and that's what kind of sparked a lot more joy for me. Like, even after I won a fight, I'd feel like, oh, that. And it was only, obviously a couple, but like after I would win, I'd be like kind of flat. I didn't really feel anything. It was just more neutral. Like, it was just like
Like you didn't feel like a high every time.
nah, it was just like I was really stressed out for a really long time, and then I did it, and I just feel a sense of relief, and then it's like on to the next one. And that's why it's really crazy in fighting where you see guys that can't stay away from sport because so much of their life has been that for 10 years, where every major life event is almost like bookmarked by a big fight in their life. Or like, oh, I remember this time in my life was when I was fighting at this stage, or when I was fighting amateurs and I went to UFC or whatever. So it's just all you do, and during all that training, you do pick up a lot of injuries and residual damage, right? And for me, I just picked up too much. And so, anyway, so the coaches started saying, hey, start coaching, start taking some time with kids, and like being able to be productive and help somebody get from a beginner stage to like learn a couple more moves. Like at that time was like really addicting for me. It gave me a sense of joy, and I was like, oh, this is really cool. Like this is really fun. And then trying to be really particular with like my coaching cues. How can I express this better? I found myself trying to get better at that craft naturally without having to have any like extra guidance. Like in my head, I was such a hard learner growing up. Like I was slow at everything. It took me till I was like 12 years old to learn how to fucking ride a bike, dude. Like, so in my head, I'm like, dude, I'm a fucking idiot. I didn't learn how to read till I was in like 3rd grade. Like I was just behind on everything. And, you know, I had to get tutors for everything. So in my head, anytime I had a teacher that I really enjoyed or really felt like could connect to me, I would always remember that person. I would always be like, man, that made a really big impact on me. So flip side, me, a couple years later, having a little bit more experience, having this identity of being a fighter and being able to pass that on to maybe some of the younger kids or somebody else who just started the gym. And I'm like, oh, I know what position you've been at. Hey, just stay the course, keep doing X, Y, and Z. You'll get to where you want to be at. Like that was like really cool for me. And that gave me a new sense of purpose, and it made it a lot easier of a transition from doing all the fighting stuff, because that was all I really wanted to do. And so then ever since then, I was just like coaching. And then when one of the pros was like, hey man, you want to just hold some mitts for me for my next pro fight? This is gonna be my first pro fight. Can you corner me? I was like, you want me to corner you? What the fuck, right? So it's just like, you just feel like, oh, that's the next level. That's cool. Yeah. And then you go coach a guy for his first pro fight. You know, he paid you a couple $100 for, hey, thanks for all the work that you made. I'm like, whoa, this is crazy. And I'm like 21, 22, right? So I'm like, man, I just got paid a couple $100 for doing something I was gonna do for free anyway. Like I would have helped this guy no matter what.
Yeah.
So I was like, man, this is the life, right? Like this is sick.
I'm conning these fools.
Yeah, like these guys, they have no idea. Yeah. And then, you know, then you get some people come in where they go, hey man, like one of my first clients, he's actually a boxing coach now. He's one of my good buddies, but he was like, hey, can you hold some mitts for me? I'll pay you for an hour. I was like, what? And at the time as a 22-year-old, he'd tell somebody, I'll pay you $70 for an hour just to hold mitts for me and train me. I was like,
I got paid. I'm getting paid $70 an hour.
Yeah,
that's the standard rate.
That's some fucking nurses. Like nurses make that.
Yeah.
I don't have to go to school for this.
Legit.
Like this is crazy, right? And it was something I love to do. I love training with people. I love and just seeing progression in people and like, oh fuck, like I helped them do that. Like that's pretty awesome. So that just kept me in the game. That just kept me moving forward, and one thing led to another. But what really kept me in it was like just working with the kids, man. Working with kids was really fun. It was awesome, and it kept me focused, I think, during that time. Because once again, it was another period where I just felt lost. I just was like, this was kind of not necessarily taken away from me, but.
Do you still work with the kids at Lionheart?
Yeah, I'm starting to again because my schedule kind of opened up a little bit. So I want to start spending more time with the kids program. So we're all trying to like
kickboxing,
jiu-jitsu. Yeah.
I'm only bringing this up because you wanted me to.
Yeah, say it.
No, you kind of mentioned that moving on from your dream of being an MMA fighter / eventual champion, it was a tough pill for you to swallow, and to this day you feel like a failure about it.
Yeah, part of me still feels like, man, like if I were to turn back the time, like clock, like what would I do different? Like how would I change things, right? And I think it is an important exercise to do, but it's also like, in the grand scheme of things, it's like, obviously you can't turn back time. There's nothing you can do about it. So it is what it is, right? So that's the one thing that keeps me like just moving forward and being okay with it and kind of swallowing that pill. But dude, forever I just felt like a failure, and I still kind of do in that way a little bit. Like
Because you gave up on your dream?
Yeah, because part of me feels like, did I quit too early? Did I just turn my back on it and just say when it got hard, I just said I took my ball and went home? Like, did I? That's what I think about. You know.
Well, you don't know if that fourth concussion was going to be the last one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And some of these dudes coming out of Russia and shit like that, they got nothing else to live for,
Brother, and
they
that's
got fighting, and you had shit. You know what I mean?
And when I saw other pro fighters who I looked up to, and they came and trained with us, and seeing how kind of like their life that they live now, as like 40-year-olds or 30-year-olds, like late 30s, I was like, I don't know if that's the life I want for myself.
Their life like now.
Like at the time, some of the pro fighters who were fighting at the highest level, champs and stuff, a couple of them came and trained with us. And you get to meet some of these guys. And you know, a lot of these guys are solid down to earth dudes, but like they were the man in the gym, but outside of the gym, the rest of their life was kind of all over the place. Whether it was family life, whether it was their career, whether it was like their ability to move on from fighting, it was like that was their identity and they just stuck with it. Like, I'm a fighter, you know, which is fine. You know, but I knew I couldn't do that for myself. I was like, I can't just say I had 4 fucking amateur fights. I can't move on my life saying like I'm a fucking fighter, like I'm a seasoned vet. Yeah. It's like me playing high school football and being like, yeah,
Al Bundy. Yeah.
I can coach in the NFL. It's like, no, it's not how that works, right? It's like, so I knew I had a lot to prove for my own self. Like I feel like I didn't get to prove what I wanted to prove in my own knowledge and my own skill base and what I could have done, maybe in MMA or whatever. But I had to, like, I go, okay, well, maybe I could do that with coaching. But going back to the whole failure thing, like, no matter what, I feel like that'll always kind of be there. But that's okay, you know. And for a while, it took me a while to be okay with it.
Do you think?
Because it was always hanging over my head.
Yeah.
So like you're what? You're like 32, right?
Yeah.
So like, I feel like you have so much more time because like I'm almost 10 years older than you, but then like, I think you're looking at it at such a small time frame because your story actually reminds me of Freddie Roach's. You know, like he wanted to be a fighter. It didn't really pan out for him, and then he went to like alcoholism and all that, and then he came back. But what he does now overshadowed his being a fighter. So you might make this pivot where Nick the coach or something else overshadows and you become a legend in like this other thing. That can happen too.
Well, also, you remember that WWE guy who got into MMA real quick, got his ass absolutely beat, and now everyone just sees him as a huge joke?
Oh, CM Punk?
Yeah. I mean, there's a level of that, too, where it's like, man, good thing you just said, you know what, this ain't for me in that way.
No, for sure, because, like, at the time, everything in my life was fighting, right? That was it. That's all I had. That's all I would look forward to. That's all I cared about. So, you know, I had to pull away from it. Like, there was nothing I could do outside of that. Because once
Probably not a good thing.
Because also too, you see guys who just had like okay careers.
Yeah.
And at that time, they had nothing to show for it. And then, like, you get a pro fight, you get paid like $1,000 to show up, maybe $1,000 to win on a local show. And I was like, dude, fuck that. Like, I don't want to do that. If I coach like fucking 10 clients throughout the week, I can make that money in a week.
Yeah. With no CTE.
Because you're also dedicating. It's almost opportunity cost that you're giving up, time commitment that you have to put into it, and then it may not pan out. Like I could, fucking get a couple of our guys now, some amateur guys from the same team that we're fighting at. Some of them were on their way to go pro. They had the first pro fight, and his first pro fight, detached retina.
Oh no.
Second time.
Oh, Jesus.
Can't fight anymore, right?
Yeah.
And luckily, he was able to pivot. He's doing his other media company, and he's moving. He's doing his thing. But he's a hustler. He's that kind of guy. And for some guys, they just stick around and they just don't know when to turn their back on it and want to pick up their shit and go.
If at your time that you were fighting, if you were to like kind of rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, and then in whatever you consider, I'm assuming now, as a coach, rate yourself where you're at on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate yourself?
I was probably like a 5 back then. 5.
So 7.
7 now.
7.
7 now.
That's how he rates himself.
Yeah, exactly.
But I've seen him fight.
Maybe like a 6.5, 7 now, as far as like where I'm at skill wise.
As a coach?
As a coach, yeah. Because there's always like, in my head, I know there's always more I could do. Like.
Yeah. So you think you were a 5 fighter back then, so like a 7, but and a 6.5 coach now, so like a 8.
Maybe.
Sick.
I don't know. I've been through a lot of coaches, and he's probably one of the more patient ones.
Yeah.
It's different because like most coaches, I think they were themselves phenoms, or they were like quick to learn, and they were great athletes, and then they just like, well, I need money, so I'm gonna be a coach or a teacher, and they have no patience because they were so good at it.
It's
And
a
they
skill
look
to
at you-
teach. It's
And then they look at you like you're a fucking idiot. You can't get it quick enough.
well, Tom Brady said he would never want to be a coach because he doesn't know how to like do that.
Yeah, but Nick was one of the first coaches where I felt like, oh, not only am I learning, like I'm not being rushed to learn. Like it was weird.
It's because I taught the kids, man. Like the kids really helped me because it's like the kids listen better than the adults, honestly. Like when you get them at a certain age, like if they can focus for a little bit and you know how to like keep control of the room, keep control of the environment, like you could teach a kid a lot, and they could do some really cool stuff and techniques that are really complex and really complicated that some adults can't learn and do just because of like their brain, and they're constantly like fucking with themselves. But the kids are so free that you can kind of like, as long as you give them the right cue, the right like progression for their skill that you're trying to teach them, they can fucking pick up anything. And that gave me a really good foundation, because if I could teach a 5-year-old how to kickbox or do jiu-jitsu or wrestle and do all 3, I could do that for any adult, anybody who walks in.
It's funny because I think that's where it comes out for you, is that like if I were to ask you, hey, are you a good coach? You'd be like, no, I suck. But then like if I were to say, hey, could you have helped Jason Cheney win that fight? You would absolutely say yes. Yeah. And I think like when you put the subject in your face, you're like, you're so confident that like you are the best person for this job. But then it's funny when if it's just you
Rate
alone,
yourself from 1 to
if
10.
you're alone,
1.
you're like, I suck.
He's like, I can teach the kids.
You gotta stay humble, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but I like that when it comes down to the task, that's when it comes out. That
So we're gonna move away from talking about grooming kids, and we're gonna talk about going solo and starting his own personal training fitness business on the next one. So stay tuned.
See you later. Bye.
see you there. Bye.
Nick love the kids.